cheer for your Sydney Swans.
Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club.
So to all you loyal Swans out there, you just can't get enough of the red and the white.
Fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods.
G'day there, Singers and Swanlings. Welcome back to A Bevy of Bloods. You're joined as always by the crew from Sydney. I'm Harps, and I have superfan Sam on the line with me.
That's right, you lucky little Swans fans. Today we're going to talk about our unfortunate gut-wrenching loss against Port Adelaide and look ahead to the game against the Suns. Remember, if you like what you hear, please give us a follow. Harps, kick things off with a quick game recap, please.
A disappointing game, Sunday afternoon, 36,000 people at the SCG. Beautiful afternoon at the SCG. Went down again to Port Adelaide. I heard in the week we'd lost 10 out of 11 games to them. That's a shocking stat. Lost by 8 points in the end. 13-7, 85, 10-17, 77. Lot to talk about. There was a fan ejection for some interactions with Lear. We'll get into all that. But Sammy, look, before we get going, Sammy, you'll give us 3 words of the game, but it's been a while since we've heard from you. You've been to the North Melbourne game. You've been to Gather Round. How are your travels, mate?
Yeah, they were pretty good. Obviously, North Melbourne was good. We got a win, a good win. Luke Parker was fired up that night, but it was hard to see him in blue and white, but absolute Swans legend, so all the best to him. But yeah, very good to get the win there. And then Gather Round, it was a pretty disappointing performance. But Gather Round, actually, I was staying with my cousin, who's Oscar, he's a Collingwood fan. Some of you guys know him. I had to sleep on this sort of upright chair the first night. So I went to try to find an air mattress and was sort of running around Adelaide CBD looking for an air mattress. And eventually found one and couldn't find a pump, so ended up having to blow it up manually, which was a pain in the ass. But given all the security worries that happened whilst I was in Melbourne with the guns and my lack of planning, I actually walked into Adelaide Oval with a blow-up mattress in a box and a pump for like a football. I was kind of like, this is probably so sus, walking in looking like this. But thankfully, the security were more worried about a 5-year-old girl with an open can of Solo that I just walked straight through with a sus-looking box and a bike pump.
It's the new clean-shaven look, Sam. You look so wholesome now, mate, with the new look.
Right, yeah. Well, anyway, yeah, I won't be taking a pump or an air mattress again because we lost to Collingwood. So that's one thing off the superstition list that I won't be coming with. But anyway, the whole, increasing security thing at the MCG is very much just an MCG thing because there was no increased security at Marvel or Adelaide Oval or the SCG. And, yeah, realistically, they're very safe places to go anyway. And even the 2 guys with guns actually ended up having a fist fight. So nothing to see there. And hopefully we move on from that and people can go into footy with that an hour and a half wait. But anyway, that's been, I guess, the highlight of my travels.
Yeah, I'm sorry we couldn't get the win against Collingwood. But to be fair, Collingwood looked excellent this weekend, so maybe it wasn't as bad as we thought it was. They look like the team to beat. Anyway, Port Adelaide back at the SCG. Still haven't had the song there this year, my man, but what did you think? Give me 3 words.
Shit, Merida, and Aaron Francis. Well, that's 4 words, I guess, but they all mean the same thing. No, look, Francis was actually very good. So I'll eat all my words this week. What would your 3 words be, Hubs?
I thought it was not good enough. I thought it was. Look, we can get into some of the details, but a high level, I just thought we just weren't good enough. Like missing passes, dropping balls, missing opportunities. I took a couple of my family members who don't watch a lot of AFL, and my mum said to me on the way home, they had 27 scoring shots. 10 goals, 17, right? And didn't even get to 80 points. And when I'm watching games, I often think if you get 90 points, you're going to win most games. right? Sometimes there are higher scoring games and lower, but if you can hit 90, I find you win most games. And to have 27 shots at goal and not even break the 80, just not good enough. Not good enough. We're not gonna get anywhere near the 8 with that kind of performance. And then I was looking at the ladder, and the ladder was grim reading. I mean, we're fifth bottom, and we're above a lot of the teams that's are joke teams on social media, right? So yeah, it's a wake up call.
100%.
So what do you think, Sam? Tell me your impressions of the game, mate.
Well, look, let's start with the stats. So we won the stats by, I think, by 66. They beat us, had one more kick, but we had about 75 more handballs. Maybe even 76. Sorry, I might be getting it wrong. We won the inside 50s. We won the free kick, so we can't put anything on that. We dominated in clearances. We lost the hit out slightly, but Grundy had, I think, 25 touches to their ruckman's 10, so I think we would have won the ruck in a sense as well. We smashed them in contested possessions by 46. We smashed them in uncontested possessions by about 40 or 42. We had less turnovers. We had more intercepts. In terms of possession, somehow we had more possession, which I think is is crap. We had more bounces and more 1%ers, and that's all the areas effectively that we won. What we lost in that was effectively we were not efficient enough. So they were 4% more efficient with their disposal, but probably more worryingly was what you mentioned before of 10 goals, 17. That wouldn't include any shots that were out on the full, and that would be for both sides. But they had 20 scoring shots and beat us by 8. And we had 27 and lost by 8. And that's, again, there's probably a couple more shots in there. So they moved the ball more efficiently. What they also did was they controlled the game more. They had an extra 25 marks, an extra 7 contested marks, an extra 5 marks inside 50. And I reckon most of the 9 inside 50 marks we had would have come in the last quarter anyway. So they were just much more efficient at moving the ball and controlling the game. And then the other part that we lost was pressure. So they out-tackled us. And when we look at the stats and how much more of the ball we had, that actually does make a bit of sense. But I don't feel like we were that dominant with the ball until the last quarter. And I felt like their pressure, especially in that first half, was immense. And to be honest, outside of, a 5-minute patch in the third quarter, I think at the start of the third quarter, where we kicked 3 goals, effectively for the first 3 quarters, we did nothing else. So we were really, really poor. I think that comes down to a couple of groups. I think the small forwards this game were horrible. Like Hanley got subbed off. I didn't notice him at all. I didn't notice he was in the game.
No.
I thought Braden Campbell had a shocker. I think he had some good moments, but if he's playing forward, he needs to be able to kick goals, and he missed some crucial opportunities. And when he got caught holding the ball too, that was just so lack of awareness. I said straight away, as I think he needs some time in the resis, noting that we actually don't have any players in the resis because half the squad's out injured. But I was really disappointed in his game. Hayward popped up for his 2 goals, but again, I just don't really. Outside of that, he doesn't really do a whole lot. I don't think, Cleary had a great game, and I didn't really notice him, but a lot of the commentary from our group was that it just doesn't seem like he's up to AFL standard. So, to be fair, the small forwards haven't been bad the whole season or anything like that, but that's our lot of 5 small forwards who, although Will Hayward kicked 2. Outside of that, they had a very minimal or negative impact on that game. The second group is our key position players, and this goes back to the trade and draft period where we knew that was a weakness. We didn't do anything about it. And, if Aaron Francis is in this 23 and our best player potentially, then that's just pathetic. Look, this game has been amazing. I can't, hands up, anyone can say you're wrong, Sam. He's great. Sure. But previous form, he's never played anything like that. And for him to come in and absolutely dominate compared to our other key position players, I don't think Rampy was good. I feel very bad for Tommy McCartan getting thrown around the whole time. Hamling went up forward and he was seemingly getting dominated back. Melican first game back, but I didn't really notice him having a very good game up forward. I thought Hayden McLean had a very almost game, you know. We'll touch on a bit more, I guess, later, but he was very good in a lot of ways, but just not polished enough. So, you know, obviously we've got some injuries there and, you know, I guess some personnel changes, but that's an area we really could have strengthened over the off-season. We haven't, and that group is just not performing for a variety of reasons. So that's a big worry. And the other area I want to touch on is the mids. And look, I don't think you can really blame the midfielders for lack of effort. It does seem like they're trying, but most weeks our mids are not getting 25 touches. They're getting somewhere between, probably 23 and 19. You look at, Port Adelaide this week and they had less possessions than us. You had Rosie on 27, 80 less possessions, 70 less possessions. You got Rosie on 27 touches, Butters on 27 touches. Horn Francis has had 20. I don't know, it's that's their big three, and Rosie was actually playing at half back. So this week's probably not a great example, but go look around at all the other games that were played this weekend, and you're not going to have your midfielders getting 23 touches. They've got to lift. James Jordan has had two ineffective games the last 2 weeks. He hasn't shut anyone out, and that's his job. Obviously, he started the season very well, so hopefully he can get back to that form. Chad has looked out of sorts. Chad's my favourite player, so I love Chad. I want him to stay. I'm not sitting here going he's not worth the money or anything like that, but it hasn't. I don't know. It just seems like he bombs the ball forward. His disposal efficiency is 48% this week. Not good enough. He had 21 touches. He had more contested possession, which is good. But he had 8 turnovers and he had 4 score involvements. It's just not good enough, And I think
Sammy. We can feel your passion. I mean, we could go through every player, right? I hear you. And it wasn't good enough. It wasn't good enough. I mean, I felt we started every quarter giving a goal away. I mean, it's not quite true. I think we started the second and third giving a goal away within 20, 30 seconds, right on the back foot immediately, and then just not able to get it back into it, and not scoring enough in the first half. Two goals at half time. You're just not going to win a football match that way. It doesn't matter how well you play in the back end. But look, you make a good point, and it's one we talked about a bit, which is our players doing more, right? So a couple of players we want to talk about, like Blakey. You didn't mention Blakey there. What are your thoughts on Blakey? He should be one of our leaders. Again, I looked around at them, and even when our pressure was on, Rioli was up the other end getting goals, right? Their senior players were stemming the flow or getting score pressure when they needed to, right? To keep them above in the game. Yeah, I mean that passage in the second quarter of Blakey, what do you think about that with the 3 shots at goal?
Look, I mean, I think that the biggest worry is that if that was our real only avenue to goal, was give it to Blakey and him to run the whole field and take pot shots when he's out of breath. So I actually don't really blame Blakey. I think he was, our spark when we were down. So he didn't have his best game by any means, but he certainly didn't have his worst. And that, I guess, that group that I didn't mention is probably, I think, the group that are doing really well is sort of the halfback flankers in Blakey, in Roberts, in Jake Lloyd, Riley Bice has come in and been a revelation. So those guys, I kind of get what you're saying there in terms of, Blakey could have kicked 3 goals or at least kicked 1. But he's just run, 100 meters and probably had a couple touches per chain. You can't just give it all to a halfback flanker and expect him to be the one to change the game. It's a team effort, and again, could have capitalized on those opportunities, but at the same time, I would say he certainly wasn't our worst, and certainly that area of the field is probably our strongest area, and the area I wouldn't call out as an area that needs to improve or do more. Maybe sometimes they can move the ball a bit quicker or be a bit more efficient. But I think that the other areas are more of concern. The small forwards probably more this week than all weeks, but
Mm. We talked about Hanley. I mean, we'll get on to kind of next game, right? It poses a real problem for next game. No injuries picked up, but look, coming up against a good Suns game. So a lot of decisions to make. What do you think of McInerney and Melican, both just back from time off, suspension, injury? Again, I didn't feel like I thought they were okay. I didn't think they did enough.
I guess inconsequential, I would say. Like, I just didn't seem, they just sort of seemed, really like them both as players, although it really frustrates me when Juzzy holds the ball up, which he sort of did again a couple times when he really could, move things along a bit quicker. But I don't think either of them had, bad nor good games in a sense. I wouldn't say neither of them stood out as, impactful returns, nor should they, obviously they weren't out for form reasons, but obviously they're going to retain their spots, but I wouldn't say they necessarily added anything in.
We should flip to some positives, right? Because it was a disappointing game. I can hear your disappointment. I know the Swans fans of the game are disappointed. I was disappointed. It was what it was, right? But maybe just before we move on, the McCartan thing, I also think has got to stop. Right, I was right behind the goals, a different seat this week because, as I said, I went with some people. So I was up close to the goal square, and I was watching McCartan just ping pong from back to front. Right, over the last few weeks. Right, he's been back, he's been forward, It's so hard to set yourself as a player in any game when you're changing the skills and the spacing and where you're meant to be. I don't know what to put it down to. I mean, I thought Hayden was very good up front. I know Amadi's out. Maybe Logan's back in this week. He's been in the VFL again. But look, I think this McCartan thing has got to stop. He looks so good at the back, and it's just so hard to bounce him up the top and make him do a full forward role while he's still thinking his back and then flipping from week to week, right?
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I was watching the Geelong Hawthorn game, and James Sicilly's another one of those players that sort of goes back and forward, and he can do it. He's more experienced than Tommy McCartan, and but even he had a horrible day today up forward, and was getting criticised down back. So a player that is all Australian level struggles with that too. And I think Tommy McCartan has potential to be an all Australian. I think he's a really, really good key back and intercepting defender. And I think we should keep him there. We've tried it, and he actually looked good against the Gold Coast, ironically, in that preseason game. But since then, it just hasn't clicked for him up forward. And I think Rampy's really looking like he's on the decline. I actually saw him today in Bondi walking around, but it looks like he's not the player he used to be. And I don't think he should necessarily be out of the team or anything like that. But I think that having McCartan and Melican as probably two keys down there. I've also liked the look of Hamling most of the time. I don't think he's had his best 2 games back to back, but I think having those guys down there should just stay there unless there's a real crisis where we don't have anyone else. But until then, we've seen I think if we're going to talk about some positives, then we may have found an option to go up forward for the next few weeks. So yeah, but I think a positive we should mention though, and I mean this is a bit of it's an inconsequential positive, but we did play very well in the last quarter. Like our last quarter, we were absolutely dominant. They still managed to score though, so didn't count for what it needed to. I think they probably still kicked 2 or 3 goals. That got them over. Yeah, I think they kicked 3 goals straight to our 5 goals 8. But we did really dominate them, and it is such a shame, I guess, that we can only play one quarter of good, consistent football. But that was a positive to the game, is that that I did see some signs of life in a sense compared to the first 3 quarters. There was that 5-minute or 10-minute or whatever stretch where we did kick the 3 goals, but at the end of the day, Port still won that quarter. And it wasn't strong enough for long enough. So I think that last quarter at least showed signs. And if we could have kicked 8 goals 5, we would have won the game. But it's it's not good enough. But I think we should get into the votes. I think that's where the somewhat positives will come in.
Yeah, I agree. Look, before we hit the Bevy of Bloods medal, I will just say as well, I thought the SCG security did well with the fan who threw something at Aliir. Not acceptable, right? I think we all agree. There was a bit of chat behind the goal as to whether it was too much to throw him out. It was only a clapper, etc. But I mean, look, my view is you can't be throwing anything at any player from any team. So I must say, but he's sitting like 2-3 rows behind that. I thought they handled that very well and diffused the situation. But yeah, let's go Bevy of Blood medal, right? It's our version of the Bob Skilton medal. We got 3-2-1 for the best one on the ground each game. This week, we'll start with 1 point. Sammy, he's been in a lot. He's been one of our best players all 6 rounds. Row bottom.
Yeah, look, it was tough, and I think when we get onto the honourable mentions after this, it'll sort of make sense why it was tough to work out who to give the votes to this week. But Rowie had some good moments. I think he had 23 touches. He kicked a goal. He had I think 8 or 9 tackles. Was kicking inside 50, rebounding. He's never going to be the most polished midfielder, but he always does give his best, and he really does have those sort of captain tendencies. In a sense, he's he always tries his hardest, and he probably had, as per the stats, probably more of an uncontested game, which is why his disposal efficiency is maybe a bit higher than the other mids. But I guess that's probably why. Is it just that he played a solid game, so we'll give him the 1 point.
Yeah. Look, the effort. I will say, I thought the effort was there right till the end. I noticed right bottom at the end. I noticed a lot of players still tackling right till the end. 2 points. Fan favourite Heaney again had a good game, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Heaney probably, if you look at the stats, his game didn't look as good, but on the eye test, it really seemed like he was really involved. And he had 13 contested possessions. He kicked 2 goals. Pretty well. I think all the goals we kicked this week were crucial in a close game. That we lost. I think he was up there for clearances as well. He had 4 clearances. I don't know. I just think his game probably looked the best for at least for 3 quarters. He would have been the best on ground for the Swans.
Yeah. No, agreed. He's not hit his best all season, but he's been close enough to it that he's still making a big impact on.
Got very, very high standards for him after last year, but he was great against Collingwood.
Yeah, I'll do the top spot, Sammy, just because he deserves a wrap. So it couldn't be anyone else. Aaron Francis, 3 points. Well done, Francis, the Ginger Prince, right? He comes under a lot of scrutiny. Every time his name goes down, you hear Swans fans questioning where he's going to play. Is he the back? Is he utility? What's he doing? Blah, blah, blah. And honestly, he came on, and I was sitting, again, very close to him, and I was down the end where he scored all 3 goals, and took that mark and just missed the 4th. And he was in everything. Someone made the point that he came on at a point in the game where everyone else was tireder and he was fresh. So there is something in that. But look, you got to give it to him. Best game he's ever had in the Swans jersey, easily. And look, makes it a good one for selection. I don't think you can drop a man after 3 goals like that. He was the catalyst for the 4th quarter and nearly got us over the line. So what do you think, Sammy? More of Francis next week?
I never thought I'd say this, but yes, I am one of his biggest critics. But as I've always said, prove me wrong, and he did, and he was fantastic. And I think I was the first one to suggest 3 votes for him, because he did come on and change the game, and everything he touched bar that goal, which would have been Buddy-esque if he kicked that. Where he sort of pushed off, went around, sort of snapped. He did miss it. It was a pretty average shot, to be fair, but everything he did in the lead up to that was really, really good football play. And, I think he had 7 score involvements from 13 touches in a quarter of football. And he, some of his goals were probably a little bit lucky. But you got to be there to do it. And he, was equal highest scorer for the game alongside Willie Rioli in a quarter. So, credit where credit's due, and I think 3 votes well deserved. And look, I mean, prove me wrong again. Keep it up. Like I don't want to dislike any Swans players, but yeah, it's just the past performances have not been anywhere near how good he was on the weekend. And hopefully, he can do that all over again. And I think he can't be the sub. He's got to be in the 22. So well done to Darren Francis.
Yeah, and look, it's an interesting position, right? There's a lot of players, not fighting for spots, but a lot of opportunity for spots, right? There's a lot of players not hitting the mark exactly. Injuries forcing changes. That's the first time we've seen Francis all season. I mean, I can't remember if we saw him through the finals at the end of last year. But he's not on the team frequently, and he really came in and delivered. So yeah, hats off, Francis. 3 points, well done, mate. Good game. Honourable mentions then. So I'll go again, Sammy. Hayden McLean, one of my favourites. I love so much about his game. And I really thought, I made a note halfway through the game, that everything good we did on Sunday went through Hayden. I think he touched probably everything. Every time we had a chain that looked successful, or had a mark that led to goal, etc., I thought he was in or around the play. But I was just disappointed, and I'm not criticising him. I think he'd be disappointed himself. He had some very makeable goals, which he could have made, would have made a big difference. And then that drop in the goal square with like a minute left, get us right next to that. He did all the work on the body. He got himself 2 hands in the football. No one in contest with him. Wasn't like he was being contested. He'd made the space with his body and dropped that mark, which would have been back to 5 points, I think, with a minute left to go. So, I mean, he still did a lot well, right? Got to give him the goals, but I just wanted to see him really put in a game-winning performance.
Yeah, no, I think he's probably been robbed of at least a vote here because he was very good, but he probably robbed himself of that vote. Just in terms of how he, really could have stood up and been the hero. In moments, and he did miss the gettable shots, and he did drop a few marks, but he was really good. I totally agree, and yeah, I think you and I were probably the ones putting him in the votes, and everyone else was taking him out. So,
yeah. Matty Roberts, top disposals in the whole game. What do you think of Matt Roberts?
Yeah, I thought he had a good game. I think, he's in a bit of a weird spot potentially with the Bice coming in and how the defence is looking. So I think he probably had maybe his best game of the season. I think he had 9 score involvements as well. So 73% disposal efficiency. Again, one that could have been in the votes. It's always a bit of a weird one trying to work out the votes in a loss. But I thought he was very good.
Yeah. And we had another honourable mention, Grundy. Grundy been a mainstay all season. He's picking up points every week. Again, look, we really would struggle without him. He's fundamental to the team, winning all the contests in the middle on the ruck. So Grundy again nearly got the points. We knew we had him as high as 2 points at one point, but just dropped down to the honourable mentions, mainly on the strength of Heaney and Robonna's performances.
Yeah, it's he again another one he could have easily been in, and he had I think 17 contested possessions, which is massive game.
Yeah, Sammy, we're all deflated, right? We're fifth bottom, and it's a tough run coming up. We got the Suns, and we got the Giants, third and fourth in the ladder, right? Both playing very well. Where do we go from here, mate? The Suns away. Suns win a lot at home. Good record. They're 4-1. How do you see the weekend going?
Yeah, well, I think looking at the team, it is a bit of a weird one because I don't really know where the changes come from. I do think that we need to make changes. I don't think that we can go in unchanged. So I think that there needs to be one of the small forwards needs to go out. And I think Gus Sheldrick needs to come back in. Look, I'll get there. I'll start with the small. So I think that Gus needs to come back in. I thought his game against Collingwood when he came on, he did everything he could have in that time. I think he had 13 touches and kicked a goal. I could be completely wrong there, but I think that's right.
No, he did.
And I thought it was a bit stiff that he got dropped. So I think he's the obvious one to come back in, hopefully back into the 22 as well. For me, I would be dropping one of. I actually wouldn't like to see Hanley dropped as much as he was subbed. I think he's had a really bright start and he's really new to his career, so I'd actually like to see him stay in. But, potentially, I guess Cleary, maybe not Corey Warner, we need him for the contract extension, but Cleary or Braden, maybe one of those dropped and the other one relegated to the sub bench, or maybe Corey relegated to the sub bench, or maybe even Hanley back to sub. I don't know, but I think I want to see one come out of the squad altogether and be an emergency, and one get relegated to sub, and I'd like to see Gus back in. In terms of the keys, I mean, it would have to be Francis again comes into the 22, and then so it would be him and the Dostridge up front. Potentially bring Logan back, but to do that, we'd need to drop one of the key backs and then keep Tommy McCartan there, unless they wanted to play Tommy McCartan forward because he matched up really well in the preseason. This would be the only game and the last chance to make that work, and if you know what I mean. But I don't know. I think I'd just prefer to see him down back, and I think it's getting commented on a lot by a lot of the pundits on the AFL shows that he should just be back. But anyway, I think if you had to drop a key, like it would probably be Hamling or Rampy. No, I don't really want to see either of them out of the team. I actually quite like both of them. I love Rampy, obviously he's a legend, and Hamling I think has been pretty good since he's come in, and maybe not the last couple of weeks. So maybe he's got to be the one to go. But yeah, I probably would bring Logan back in. But I guess, weeks coming up, like I think by the time we hit the bye, target about 5 wins. And we have a couple of tough games, but we also have, potentially some me, there's never any winnable games, but I guess, maybe teams that we're closer to on the ladder at the moment, Essendon 11th, Carlton at home in 13th, not that home form's been great. The D's, who looked fantastic against Freo, by the way, so who knows what could happen with them. And then there's Richmond at the MCG as well. So we've got 4 games there against teams that are around where we are on the ladder. I do think it's important for us to probably win, I'd say 3 up until that point, to keep us in touch potentially. Even I'm not even sure if we'd have enough of a runway we'd almost win every game to stay in. But yeah, I think it's really important that we get to the bye, which for us is in round 14. So we would have played, I guess, 13 games by then. It is a bit of a weird season, so 13 games out of 23. We do need to probably hit about, the 5 or 6 win mark. So that way, and then we've got to come storming home to make finals. It's really looking quite precarious, to be honest with you. This season's, it's getting close to on a knife's edge. And as much as, I don't mind us losing games early in the season compared to later in the season, we do need to start turning up. And I don't think the last couple of games, we haven't really shown up. We've been convincingly beaten, although not on the scoreboard. We've really been second rate to Collingwood.
Yes, we have. I couldn't agree more. With changing the team, I don't think you can perform like that and not make changes. I'd like to see Francis keep his place. For what it's worth, I'd drop Hamling. Again, I think he's been good. I thought he was out-muscled a bit on the weekend. But look, if Logan's even close, get him in, right? I think we need goals, we need targets. I'd find a way to get him into the squad. I will say I agree with what you're saying about the ladder as well. Suns, I was looking through their results. Beat the Eagles, beat Melbourne, beat Adelaide by a point. That was a good game. Beat the Kangas, and then they were beaten heavily by the Tigers. So they played all 4 of the bottom 4. Very much an easier run than we've had to now. So look, they're they're flying high. They're 5-1 or 4-1, I think. Sorry. But look, maybe it's a product of the fixtures as much as it is their performances. So yeah, I guess I'm saying maybe all is not lost.
Yeah, they've won 9 of their last 11, and they won their first 7 at home last year and dropped the last 2 later in the season. So they are really strong there. We did beat them there in the preseason, though. So we did beat them there round 1 of the previous season as well. So it's not to say that that we can't do it again. But I think it's it's probably the performances that they put into the to this season against those bottom 4 teams that are what's standing out for them and why they're being looked at so positively. The game against Adelaide too, they probably should have lost that with a late free kick.
Yep. No, I agree. So Sammy, what do you think needs to happen? Then how do we get the win?
Well, I think we got to really compete for 4 quarters. We're not playing 4 quarters at the moment.
Yeah.
And that's something that's really worrying. I think we really only played 1 good quarter and 5 minutes.
Yeah, I hear you, mate. I would, if I were in the sheds, or in the training ground this week, I'd be focusing on the skills. I think the last 2 games, they shouldn't need to, but it's just been sloppy. Like, we've been dropping marks. There were balls flying over people's head all game on Sunday. Missed hand passes, missed tackles, just basics, right? Which lose your games. And against Collingwood as well. Like, we had enough chances to stay in that game, and our kicks have just been going awry or dropping the mark when it came to us. I think if we can clean up the skills, we'll put together a better performance. The better performance will breed confidence, and hopefully we get up. But that remains to be seen. Sammy, any final thoughts before we go?
No, not much. I just hope we can do better this weekend.
Yeah, we need to find a bit of a thread back into the season, because these last 2 weeks have been disappointing. That brings us to the end of the episode. Thank you for listening through to the end, listeners. If you made it this far, it must mean we're doing something good. So give us a like and a follow.
Whether it be in person or on the potty, we look forward to whenever you can join us next time. But until then, up the bloods, and can you Swannies.